The Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee have offered the accuser, Dr. Ford, a Wednesday hearing. She would be questioned by a female attorney, and she would go first. They said no, her lawyers. The hearing has to be Thursday. The senators have to question, and Kavanaugh goes first. Now, the arrogance of her left-wing Democrat kook legal team is really quite remarkable, is it not? Have you ever heard of a witness or witnesses dictating the nature of a hearing, the date, who gets to question whom, and who goes first? Have you ever heard of that before? Now, she waited in the wings, having talked to the Washington Post, her congresswoman, Senator Feinstein. She's the one who held back, and now, having said she didn't want to go public, having said first she wants an FBI investigation, then says some kind of a formal investigation, refusing to testify last week, refusing to testify this Monday, so the Republicans say, okay, whoa. We'll let you testify, despite all this. Despite all this. Wednesday, we're going to have a female attorney question, and you're going to have to go first. You're the accuser. That's the way it works. The plaintiff goes first. Now, if it were the other way around, what exactly is the purpose of Brett Kavanaugh testifying if his accuser doesn't even go first? This whole thing is sickening. And apparently she has until, what is it, Rich, midnight tonight? 10 p.m., a little less than 3 hours from now, to accept the invitation by the majority on the committee, or there will be a vote on Monday. And I would say this, there should be no more invitations. It should be over. Just vote on Monday. Schumer is the guy behind the scenes manipulating this whole thing. This lawyer, Deborah Katz, and the rest of them, they're working for the Senate Democrats. We all know what's going on here. This is a campaign event. This is a political event. Don't blame me. I'm just analyzing and observing what's taking place. You can blame the Democrats. And as this has unfolded, keep a couple other things in mind. What you've heard over the last several days. You've heard from members of Congress, Democrats. You've heard from their surrogates in the media and some of their hosts. Something to the effect that all women are always telling the truth or presumed to be. All men are always lying or presumed to be when it comes to sexual harassment issues. You've heard Joe Biden say, among others, Anita Hill, that you must presume that the accuser is telling the truth and the accused must prove otherwise. I told you the other day, this turns the entire notion of justice in this country on its head. Why should we? Women are always telling the truth. Men always aren't. Or they're presumed not to be. Particularly old white men. No, we don't have to buy into this crapola, do we? No, I'm not. What else have we heard? All women are victims or presumed to be victims. All men are perpetrators or presumed to be perpetrators. That is the foundational principle for all of this. I know this to be true because I keep hearing it. I keep hearing it. I keep hearing these generalizations, these attacks. So for the Democrats, this really isn't about Dr. Ford or what actually occurred 36 years ago in high school, who did what to whom, if in fact anything was done, and if so, by whom, where, when, how. That has nothing to do with any of this because none of that would be learned anyway. None of it. This is about power. One of my concerns with the Republicans allowing any hearing at this point, after the hearing's actually closed, is they're creating a precedent for this endless trickery and deception by the Democrats when a hearing is over. We saw it in the Anita Hill accusations. You are rewarding this kind of untoward behavior by the Democrats. And you start negotiating and so forth, you've already effectively given them too much. Another concern I have is, I don't think this is the end of it. They may spring something else in the course of a hearing. Maybe somebody else will say, 36 years ago, he attacked me too. Well, do you know where? When? I don't know where. Oh, now we have a pattern. You get my point? The Democrats are quite capable of springing something else. And under the same circumstances where there simply isn't any evidence for anybody to go on. And so, this is another spectacle. And I want you to know something. On Sunday night at 10 p.m. on my Fox show, Life, Liberty, and Levin, as I've talked about it on Levin TV and on the radio, but I go very, very deep into this subject. I don't even have a guest. It is a special Life, Liberty, and Levin with just me behind my desk. And I spend the entire hour going through the history of what the Democrats have done to the judicial nomination process. I provide you substantial evidence most of you have never seen before, evidence that have come out of the shadows in the past, the form of memos involving Ted Kennedy, Patrick Leahy, Dick Durbin, Chuck Schumer, among others. I explain the history of this process and what's been done to it. I show you, I prove the way the Democrats have shifted positions on multiple times, depending on who the president is and on who the nominee is. And of course, we get into the Kavanaugh situation. I think you'll find it enormously compelling. I would encourage you, your family, your friends, your colleagues to watch it. It's 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time on the Fox News Channel, Life, Liberty, and Levin. I'm my own guest, if you will. I've never done this before on Fox, ever. So it's a special edition of the show, and I hope you'll watch it. I hope the Republican senators will watch it. I hope the Republican members of the House will watch it. Because it's time as a nation that we confront this. What's taking place here? That we have the guts to confront it, to unravel it, to expose it. Because what's taking place here has nothing to do with women's rights. Nothing. And look at the perversion of justice that they would have us embrace. From the idiot Joe Biden to the other idiots. That if somebody makes an accusation that's 36 years old and they have no specifics, virtually, to support it, that's believable. That's not believable in a court of law. It's not believable in a civil case or a criminal case. It's not believable if you have a mediator or an arbitrator. It's not believable. Period. The left has an agenda. And so we need to confront this. And we're going to. So really, don't miss it. Well, Mark, I have other things to do. Well, you might want to record it. You notice when you debate an issue with a leftist, and I watch this on these TV shows all the time, they don't want to stay on point. They don't want to stay on the subject. You want to talk about Dr. Ford, the accuser, they want to talk about Anita Hill. You want to talk about Anita Hill, then they want to talk about sexual harassment generally. You want to talk about sexual harassment generally, then they want to talk about what took place in 1923. Because this is what they do. This is what they do. They don't really want to be pinned down. They don't really want to be pinned down. And listen to the horrific things they have said about men, about white men, about old white men. Listen to the idiotic things they've said about women Women apparently don't lie. All of them. All of them. Is that how our criminal justice works? Is that how our civil justice system works? You show up in court. Oh, you're a woman. Okay. And you're a man. Well, we reverse this now. So rather than proving your case, plaintiff, woman, it's the defendant male who has to prove that your allegation is false. Is that what happens? Is that not stupid? Then why the hell should it happen in the Senate Judiciary Committee that way? Why do we listen to these knuckleheads, these Democrats, who are nothing but bottom feeders in the United States Congress, who truly do try to turn group against group, whether it's skin color, whether it's gender, whether it's income, whatever the hell it is. And now they're prepared to impeach Kavanaugh after the fact? Man hasn't even had a vote. What are you rushing for? Rushing for to actually have a vote on the hearing. What are you rushing for an impeachment, for God's sakes? I am telling you, I'm not hawking this just to hawk it. I am telling you, please watch my Sunday show this Sunday. Please. On Life, Liberty, and Levin. 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. I cover this from soup to nuts, and nuts to nuts, by the way. So we move from that to a montage of Democrats about Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser. And hat tip to Grabian for putting this together. Kirsten Gillibrand, Tammy Duckworth, Chuck Schumer, Gillibrand again, Kamala Harris, Mazie Hirono, Richard Blumenthal, Adam Schiff, Simone Sanders, Gillibrand. Go ahead.
I believe Dr. Blasey Ford because she's telling the truth. And you know it by her story.
I believe her because she's telling the truth. This idiot, Gillibrand, actually believes there are enough idiot Democrats to nominate her for President of the United States. I believe her because she's telling the truth. What kind of a fool is this? Go ahead.
Denies being at the party to begin with and says his accuser might have mistaken him for someone else. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I've heard, many predators say and refute allegations against them.
Oh, so Tammy Duckworth has concluded he's a predator. I've heard many predators say things like that. And because Tammy's a woman and Kirsten's a woman, they're allowed to say these things. And you're not allowed to criticize them, which of course I do. Because remember, if you take anything away from all this, all women are telling the truth. All are presumed to be telling the truth. All men are lying or presumed to be lying. All women are victims or presumed to be victims, and all men are perpetrators or presumed to be perpetrators. Look, it's not a matter of taking individual cases. Due process is out the window. Objectivity is out the window. You're hearing it right here. Go ahead.
Professor Ford. I think she's credible, and I think when the investigation is finished and when she testifies and Judge Kavanaugh testifies, I think a majority of senators will find her credible.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Chuck Schumer thinks she's credible. Well, then I guess she must be credible. But Chuck Schumer is orchestrating this entire thing, as he has in the past, as I will prove on Sunday. Go ahead.
Husband, this is the trauma she's been dealing with her whole life. She doesn't want to be in a bedroom that doesn't have two doors.
Wow, how does Gillibrand know all this? Anybody know? I don't believe this was in the media. Why? Because they're conspiring, that's why. They're collaborating, they're sharing information. Go ahead.
Going to be about listening to what each party has to say, but I believe her.
This is Kamala Harris. We're going to listen to what each party has to say, but I believe her. God forbid if any of these people were ever on a jury. God forbid if they were ever judges. Go ahead.
Well, I could tell you it really does have a ring of truth to it. I am skeptical of polygraphs, but for those who believe them, she has passed a polygraph test.
Now, what does that mean, Durbin? Means nothing. But he wants to believe, so he'll believe. Mazie Hirono, who has been a standout idiot in this whole thing, Democrat, Hawaii, go.
I believe Dr. Ford, as I refer to her, because she makes a very credible case.
I believe Dr. Ford, as I refer to her. Well, how is she supposed to refer to her? That's her name. But she makes out a very credible case. What case? Where did this happen? I don't know. When exactly did it happen? I don't know. How did you get there? I don't know. How'd you get home? I don't really know. Who'd you discuss this with? Nobody. Well, it says here you discussed it with your therapist, but I did. But you don't mention Kavanaugh in there. Well, that's who I meant. Why'd you come so late to the committee? Why did you go to the Washington Post first and foremost? I mean, she makes out a credible case, ladies and gentlemen, because Mazie is an idiot. And I say that as a white male, but not as an old white male yet. Richard Blumenthal, another old white male. Go ahead.
Believe Dr. Ford, the survivor. There's every reason to disbelieve.
Whoa, so now he believes her and she's a survivor. What is the point of having a hearing? Ladies and gentlemen, why the hell are the Republicans putting up with this? This is a star chamber. Listen, they're telling you why we shouldn't have another hearing. There's no point to this. We gotta walk carefully here. We gotta walk carefully? Does it sound like they're walking carefully? Just tell the truth about what's taking place here. We have Joe Biden. Joe Biden references deliverance. I would have thought if he referenced deliverance, he would be referencing Joe Scarborough, who does look like the banjo-playing kid on the bridge, who was apparently born of incest. I'm just saying the looks, I'm not the conduct. Remind me of Joe Scarborough, very much so. And why does Joe Biden, as dumb as they come, why does he reference the movie Deliverance? To honor Burt Reynolds? No. To mention my friend John Voight? No. Well, the rape scene is very much in Joe Biden's mind. It's not much of a rape scene, thank God. But that was a grotesque part of the movie because he's comparing the allegations against Kavanaugh to the deliverance scene. Hat tip Newsbusters, cut 6, go.
It's important. It's important that people understand, and I think people do now, understand how hard it is to come forward. And I always say to men, they say, why so hard? How about if you've been abused? You see the movie Deliverance? How about if you were the guy strapped to the tree? Would you come forward? Would you want to relive that? I'm serious. I'm deadly earnest.
You're deadly earnest, and you're stupid as a doorknob. We're supposed to take you serious, Lee, and you reference the movie Deliverance. How about we reference the Duke lacrosse players who were accused of gang rape? Every one of them was innocent. Joe Biden, who would tell you that we need to defend people who are accused of terrorism, who are accused of mass murder, who are accused of mass rape. They need to be defended through our judicial system. And yet when it comes to a nominee to the Supreme Court, they're treated worse than a terrorist, worse than a mass murder. And Joe Biden should know. Joe Biden has been the head Soviet-style prosecutor in many of these cases. He conspired with many of these left-wing organizations 10, 20 years ago to destroy numerous nominees. But this is what politicians do, unlike the legal system, unlike the constitutional system. The ends justify the means, and for Joe Biden, that's how it works. The ends justify the means. I believe the victim in this is Judge Kavanaugh. The accuser didn't come forward in time for a full hearing during the hearing process. She can't remember particulars. I'm not talking about complicated things. Can't remember almost anything. And now we're told that, well, the accused has to demonstrate that she's wrong and he's right. And by the way, in questioning the accuser, you can't question her on Wednesdays. You can't question her with a female lawyer. You can't question her this, can't question her that. So you got all kinds of rules out there to immunize the accuser and to hold that the accused is guilty before anything is done. I played you some of the montage. I couldn't even play any more of it last hour. It's just too disgusting, too stupid. Here's more Joe Biden. Cut 7, go.
I think they should do an FBI investigation. We did that for Anita Hill. It took 2 days, number one. And number two, most importantly, Anita Hill was vilified when she came forward by a lot of my colleagues.
Anita Hill was not vilified. Anita Hill was questioned. I question her to this day, as do many, many people. I also recall that at one point during her allegations, they took a poll nationwide, and the majority of the American people didn't believe her either. Anita Hill wasn't vilified. Anita Hill became famous. She's now a professor at Brandeis University. She wasn't brave. And I get into this a little bit on Sunday, too. Because they rewrite history. That's what the left do. They rewrite history. So now we have this magnificent Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Honestly, I think the best. And now we're supposed to believe Anita Hill. Why? Because Joe Biden is rewriting history, because Gillibrand, and all the rest of them. The Democrats in the Senate, not all, but the vast majority, are miscreants. They've destroyed the judicial review process. They know who they are, and I know who they are, so we all ought to know who they are. Go ahead.
Assassination. I wish I could have done more to prevent those questions in the way they asked them.
Prevent the questions in the way they asked them. The most aggressive questioner was Arlen Specter. Hardly a right-winger. And so you see, ladies and gentlemen, in a court of law, civil or criminal, you get cross-examined if you're a witness. If you're a plaintiff, too, in the case of a civil case, you get examined. You have depositions, you have interrogatories, you have discovery. And civil case, if you're called to take the stand, you take the stand, and you are questioned aggressively by the defendant's lawyer. In a criminal case, you are questioned aggressively by the defendant's lawyer. And you have a very high standard that you have to meet if you're the plaintiff. In a criminal case, the government. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, the Democrats have no doubt. They have no evidence. They have no facts. There's no legal standard. There's no standard. They just believe her. And so we get lectures by reprobates like Joe Biden. We don't need a lecture from Joe Biden. And we don't need to hear about his gay rape comparison either. This is a very stupid man who happened to get elected vice president of the United States by holding onto the coattails of a radical leftist by the name of Barack Obama. He's the last man they ought to talk to. He's a smear merchant. The way he went after Bork, the way they went after Clarence Thomas, the way they went after a gentleman by the name of Miguel Estrada, a Latino, the way they went after a couple of dozen honorable, decent, brilliant lawyers and professors and judges and so forth as they were seeking to serve their country in heightened position. Just destroyed. That's new in American history, you know. It's really the last 30 years. It's not the way it always used to be. You know, come to think of it, when I think of the Deliverance rape scene, Mr. Producer, I kind of do think of Joe Biden. We'll be right back. Ever hear of Donnie Douche? Donnie Douche is a regular guest on the Morning Schmo and soon-to-be Mrs. Schmo, a.k.a. the Morning Schmo, Mrs. Schmo, on MSLSD. And the reason they invite Donnie Douche every time to come on the program is because he's a flake. You know, like Jeff Flake. And Donnie Douche is on there to say the most outrageous things he possibly can. He's an old white guy, by the way. Just thought I'd mention that. And he self-identifies as a male, but who knows? So here's Donnie Douche on the Morning Schmo show today, hat tip Breitbart, cut 10, go.
And the only move for the Republicans at this point, because basically you're seeing on display a metaphor of like what this party is, and just basically just ignorant white men. And you just
ignorant white men. All you females who are Republicans, you are obviously ignorant white men. Metaphorically, not literally, I would love to smack this guy around. You know what I mean, Mr. Producer? Verbally, of course, verbally. A slobbering buffoon. Go ahead.
What would a move be like? What would they seem like if all of a sudden they stepped forward, any leaders there, and said, you know what, this is at the very least a stain we can't deal with, and particularly, and just say this is not the right thing and we need to move on? And wouldn't that send a signal to women? I know I'm living in dreamland, but I don't know what the other play is for them.
It's not a play, you moron. I'm sure this guy's lived a very morally straight life. Doesn't he sound like it? Like so many of the others in the media, so many other the hosts. Whatever happened to Mark Halperin anyway? Where's Matt Lauer? Charlie Rose? Too many to name, actually. So this guy, Donnie Douche, is really another reprobate, attacking all white men. You know, white men, the only group of people in this country who can be talked about this way. And often by white men. So now you're supposed to be ashamed if you're a white man. And I guess your children should be ashamed too. And your grandchildren should be ashamed too. You see how far the civil rights movement has come? You see how far the left has come? The left, the Democrats, have always used race. Whether it's slavery and segregation, now whether it's old white men. They are a truly dishonorable and unconscionable lot. And yet, we actually have so-called news organizations that give voice to this. Donnie Douche wouldn't be a guest if we had a serious news media in this country, Jake Tapper. The golden age of journalism. We don't need a free press for morons like this. There are morons like this in every country, particularly totalitarian countries. If Donnie Douche wasn't on MSNBC, he'd probably be on a street corner in a raincoat, screaming out at the top of his lungs. Or maybe he's into the movie Deliverance, too. Maybe he likes the rape scene, like the Vice President of the United States. You never know. We have a United States Senator from Rhode Island. He's a former prosecutor. He's a trust fund baby. That's just why he speaks like Porky the Pig and Daffy Duck. I read to you yesterday the piece by a professor, maybe it was the day before, from the University of Alabama School of Law, who was trying to tell the left, the Democrats, the media, how to impeach Kavanaugh should he be confirmed. Well, this mantle was picked up by Sheldon Whitehouse, or as we like to call him, Shelley. Picked up by Shelley Whitehouse, and I'll tell you what Shelley had to say when we return. Where were all these Democrat women when Juanita Broderick came forward? Where were all these Democrat women when Paula Jones brought a lawsuit? Where were all these Democrat women when Kathleen Willey came forward? Where were they? These people are liars. They're frauds on the left. All these standards. They didn't say they're to be believed. They went out to destroy them. I don't remember Joe Biden talking about deliverance back then, even though he obviously harbored some dreams about the rape scene. I don't remember all this talk about old white men, or men, period. I don't remember this talk about Bill Clinton having to prove his innocence, because it's guilty until proven innocent. Do any of you remember any of that? How about Mary Jo Kopechne? The worst situation of them all. Did they really want to know what Ted Kennedy did? Of course not. They embraced Ted Kennedy. McCain embraced Ted Kennedy. Biden Durbin, Schumer. The Kennedys were known as women abusers. The old man, Joe Sr., John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, God rest their souls, seriously, Ted Kennedy, even some of the offspring now. They respect women. Is this a joke? Camelot? Really? More like bread and circuses. Quigula. You know any lectures from these Democrats who have real no set clarity when it comes to morals? Any lectures from them? The Republicans, they're so gutless, they never stand up and defend themselves, let alone defend the rest of us. That is, regular Americans. The fact of the matter is they don't support women. They support abortion. They don't support women as independent individuals. They treat everybody the same. They talk about classes of women the way they talk about classes of men. Sheldon Whitehouse is a senator from Rhode Island. He's a trust baby. He was a U.S. attorney. And he's on with Chuck Todd. Now, Chuck Todd, of course, was a staffer to Tom Harkin, a left-wing kook Democrat senator, now retired from Iowa. We've invited Chuck Todd on the program, and you know what? He doesn't even respond. How disrespectful. Must be a white guy. I think he is a white guy. Cut 8, go.
There's no such
And by the way, before we go to this clip, there's two white guys talking to each other. Shouldn't that be illegal? Cut 8, go.
There's no such thing as a fair credibility check without having done the investigation.
Yes.
And sooner or later, I mark my words, there will be an investigation into this.
Yes,
it may be in a subsequent Congress.
Oh,
but you can't...
a subsequent Congress will investigate a sitting Supreme Court justice? Whatever happened to the independence of the judiciary? Not so independent anymore, is it? I'm telling you, the leftists will burn down every institution, tradition, custom, principle that we have. They do not give a you-know-what. And Shelley here, Shelley Whitehouse, may I call you Shelley? Well, I will anyway. Shelley Whitehouse is leading the pack. He's a tough guy from Rhode Island, you know. Go ahead.
With having something like this take place and then have a federal judge perhaps lie about it and then fail at the most basic task of investigation, not generate...
I don't understand. They wanted an investigation, right? Well, then why didn't Dianne Feinstein bring the accusers named Ford now 7 weeks ago? Well, you see, we didn't want it then. And she had repressed memory. And now her memory's fulsome. It's in full bloom. Oh, the timing is perfect. Her lawyers are perfect. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want an investigation, too. I want to know the extent to which the Democrats in the Senate are feeding the lawyers for this accuser. I want to know the extent to which they're strategizing together, and I know they are. I want to know their email exchanges, their text exchanges, any hard document exchanges, how many phone calls have taken place between these senators and these lawyers, between their staff and these lawyers, because then the whole seedy operation will be exposed. And as a matter of fact, we saw this in the early 2000s, as I will explain and show you on my Sunday Night Fox show. This is what they're doing. These lawyers and this accuser, they're not operating in a vacuum. They're being told what to do. The Republicans say Wednesday. She says Thursday. The Republicans say we'll have a female lawyer question you. So you really can't complain that they're a bunch of old white men. She insists that the senators question her. Republicans say, okay, you'll go first. You're the accuser, and then the accused will go second. No. The accuser will go second. The accused will go first. That is unheard of. Doesn't matter. You think the accuser and her lawyers are working up all these arguments? No, it's the Democrats who are. And they're hoping the Republicans capitulate, which they say they won't. In another hour or so, if the lawyers haven't accepted the so-called terms, like there's a negotiation going on from the committee and the accuser, and then they will vote on Monday. I'm not so sure she won't accept. We'll see. Because I think if she does accept it, be prepared for something. They're going to spring more surprises. Oh, wait a minute, there was a witness. Oh, really? Yes, she didn't want to come forward, but she's coming forward now. Oh. Matter of fact, there's 2 witnesses. Really? 2 more witnesses? Yes. Oh, yes. Well, then why didn't we know about this before? I mean, publicly, she couldn't remember. She didn't want to come forward. There weren't any witnesses. Now they're Hey, what are you, a woman hater? What are you, a white guy? You don't get to ask any questions. What are you, a bully? I'm sorry. No. You're not sorry. We're going to remember this. We're going to remember, just like we did during the Anita Hill. We're going to remember you. Oh, yes, we are. You hate women. No, I don't. Oh, yes, you do. Donnie Douche says you do. And Shelley Whitehouse, he says so too. So it must be true. You got Shelley and Donnie Douche. I mean, they would never lie. They're not political. They're not hacks. No. They're interested in getting to the bottom of this. As I said to you the other day, put yourself in Kavanaugh's shoes. What do you do? What can you say? Other than, no, I didn't, no, I didn't, no, I didn't. You're not presented with anything to counter. Well, we were at this house. Well, I was never at that house. Well, this is when it occurred. Well, I was at another place when that occurred. Well, I drove home. Well, who did you drive home with? We'd like to see if there's corroboration. Well, I don't remember. What kind of transportation did you take when you were going? Well, I don't recall it at this time in this particular hearing. Under no system of real justice would this be tolerated, ladies and gentlemen. Not under any. But this isn't about justice. It's about injustice. And we'll be right back. I hope our week filled with programming here has been meaningful to you. And I do want to thank the gentleman who substituted for me early in the week. Both white men, by the way, I notice. Although Bongino is like me, a little bit of olive skin, may I say? My man, Brian Mudd and Dan Bongino. Let's take a few more calls here. Cheryl, Park City, Utah, on the Mark Levin app. Go right ahead.
Hey, Mark. We also refer to it as Bark City because we're so dog-friendly here.
Wonderful.
Anyway, I certainly do not have repressed memories, and you were discussing Kirsten Gillibrand earlier in the show, and my memory recalled that she ran right to every camera she could get in front of and talked about how Mattress Girl should be believed. Mm-hmm. And we all know how that story turned out. Remember that whole case where this girl walked around with the mattress accusing this student?
Yeah, it was a fraud.
Yep. And so now all of a sudden she's running her mouth that we should just believe this Professor Ford just for the sake of it, and she's willing to ruin this man's life over it. I have a teenage son, I was telling your producer, and, you know, I've been having some serious talks with him about how he's got to be really careful. And
This is really the point, isn't it? If you have a son or a grandson and so forth, these are scary, scary times. These are really scary times because the overwhelming majority of men, young men in this country, are very decent and moral people, despite what you hear each and every day. If you have a son, I mean, they have a target on them. They do. They just do now. Thank you for your call. All right. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, the Border Patrol, ICE, all of our friends in law enforcement. Good night, Spritey. Good night, Griffey. Good night, Pepsi. Good night, Smokey. Good night, Zelda. And good night to all you beautiful dogs and animals out there. Get Al-Qaeda. Get the Taliban. Get Iran. Get ISIS. Get all those subhuman cockroaches. See you on Monday.